Hi, everybody. This is 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗏. I host this LinkedIn Live session together with 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗏, and you're watching or listening either live or as a recording to our LinkedIn Live Lean 42. Gene and I, we're CIO advisors in Europe and North America, and our discussions here are really for CIOs, enterprise architects, and digital leaders, and it is really about bridging the gap between business, strategy, and IT execution functions. And we really are interested in building a bigger capacity and knowledge and having informal discussions to connect on industry, market trends, different challenges that we all face, and how we can overcome them. And today we do have a great guest with us, and we're looking forward to the discussion. Gene.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. We've been gone for a couple of months, but we're back. And Terry Roach has joined us today. We're really, really lucky to have Terry here. Terry, as you know, is the CEO, founder, the big gray matter behind 𝗚𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I spoke with Terry at the Twin City Business Architecture Forum in Minneapolis. I think it was December, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I flew into Minneapolis in snow, and I was like, I want out.
Yeah, right.
But and then we ran into each other in the lounge, in the United Lounge. So that was, or American Lounge. That was great. Anyway, Terry, I mean, you're already a legend. You were at IBM, Apple, Oracle, running solution architects, running business architecture teams. And then you came up with CAD/CAM framework, which is how I actually knew you before I met you as the CAD/CAM man, which, aligned business architecture. It was kind of a step-by-step guide, in my opinion, to standing up business architecture model in companies. And that's how I used it when companies didn't know what business architecture was, but they needed to stand up a model. And
Right.
yours was there. So today, Terry, you're going to tell us the latest and greatest about operating models. I think that's the chosen topic for today. I know it was at the summit. We discussed that quite a bit. So
Yeah.
let me have you introduce yourself and your company, and also the latest you're doing in your company, the product, which is amazing.
Awesome. Thank you, Gene and Carsten. Thanks for having me. What a great privilege. Well, so as you said, I'm the founder of 𝗚𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. We've been around for just over 10 years, and we have a product for enterprise architecture. But this area of digital operating models is actually probably a better description for what we do. We come at architecture very much from the sort of top-down perspective, trying to explain how business functions. Technology is obviously an important part of it, rather than mapping out the IT estate and then pushing up to say this is how technology supports a company. So our whole mission has always been to really try to explain how the operating model functions, and this has really become more and more interesting, because I think, in my view, what I'm seeing is, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but I think that we're at a real inflection point in architecture today. I think there's been quite a renaissance in interest, and I think business architecture is one of the things that's sort of driving that. But I think that we've really got to figure out what our future is. Are we really going to be a practice that's enjoyed by a chosen few, that practice this dark art and do it very mysteriously in some dark room in IT and produce these amazing artifacts that some people can understand, but not many? Or are we really going to try and really, get across the chasm and be something that is, broadly accepted, broadly useful to an entire organization? Because that's the potential. And so that's what we're on a mission to try and help do, to make architecture more meaningful, accessible to a broad range of stakeholders. And part of that begins with changing the language, which is why we talk about operating models and representing the operating model rather than architecture, which tends to have its own connotations and represent some mystique that I think we need to take away.
So at the conference, when you were speaking, I took down a note, and I still have it. You brought up operating models, and everybody, I would say, and there was good representation there, and I would say a quarter of the people didn't have operating models in their companies or were aware of them. And you made the comment, you can't describe a business model. How can you improve it? Right?
Yeah.
And I thought, true, but it was very simple, very true. But, when I go into companies, I almost always ask, do you have a visual representation of your operating model? I would say half say no.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the mysterious thing, isn't it? Like, as you say, we've been on this transformation journey for a decade or more, the buzzword transformation. Well, if you're going to transform an organization, surely you need to all agree on what it does and how it works. And we don't really have that. We often ask customers when we see them for the first time, just what the title is today. Where do you keep your operating model today? And when we ask that question, most people, they look around at one another with blank stares and they go, we've never thought of it like that. But really, the operating model is the most important strategic asset that an organization has. And that's what we have to think of it as. The operating model is an asset. It needs to become tangible, enduring, incrementally evolving, interactive, dynamic, engaging, something that everyone in the business can access and get a current state view of how the business is functioning. And that's what's missing, which is, I think, what we're trying to propose, that we should all be on that. That if we just had this one single place where everybody could go, single definitions, never reanalyze the same thing twice, put it all in the same place, have everything connected, aligned, change it once, ripple effect everywhere else. That represents the current state of the world. And then you could immediately find out, where are their gaps, where are their pain points, where are their bottlenecks, how should we queue up the opportunities for optimization, and you get yourself into a mechanism where it's no longer just about transforming, but having this capacity to continuously transform through this ongoing visual representation of the business.
Yeah, I know when they're doing project planning and PMOs or they're doing strategy, and they'll look at roadmaps, right? They'll pull up roadmaps, but I never hear of anybody saying, "Oh, let's pull up the operating model and see how this is going to impact."
Exactly right. We often get asked, so how do you get going with architecture? How do you go and find sponsors in the business or outside of IT? And that's exactly the point I often make, which is, well, go and find the most relevant current transformation initiative underway right now. Go and look over the shoulder of the guy or the girl that's running that. And invariably, they will be looking at a roadmap. They'll be looking at a resource allocations. They'll be looking straight at delivery. And if you can come back and say, well, hang on, why don't we have a look at, say, a value stream canvas of the actual part of the business that's being transformed? Maybe that's a better starting point than jumping straight to how many people should we put on this project and how long is it going to take. But what is the thing that we're trying to change? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the pains? Where are the maturity gaps that we need to be addressing? And suddenly you'll have something, a conceptualization, a mental model that you can all agree on, that will then bring everyone together on the scope of change rather than the actual delivery.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was working with a large company, and they were really trying to get a handle on their value streams. And I said, how does your value streams, got it. You got 9 value streams. How do they you know, what's the backdrop of the operating model here? And they had several operating models. I mean, which you can do, but what's the overall operating model? You know, that, because these streams would go through, and I was like, you guys, you got too many things going on here.
That's a really good point. I mean, what is an operating model? What is our mental model for an operating model? That's another mystique that's so strange, that as an industry of architects, we haven't yet come up with a universally accepted mental model for the operating model. I'm sure if each of us was to sit down and try and draw what we think it looks like, you get 3 very different pictures. Right? And that really is the crux of the problem. So where do you start? Now, we think of the business capabilities as the building blocks, right? The little Lego blocks that you want to use to assemble how the business works. It's a really useful structure for decomposing everything that you do. But it's rather difficult and abstract for your average business person. But when you take those business capabilities and you organize them underneath a value stream, in the value stream stages, the value stream acts as a sort of scaffold for these capabilities. And the capabilities act as anchor points for the more tangible people, process, information, technology. And so you can see the structure coming together, so that if you just think of the operating model as the collection of all your value streams, all the interactions that you have with your major stakeholders, that then gives you a really tangible, neat way of representing it in a common, consistent pattern that everybody can get their head around. Okay, that's all we need to think about. What are the major things that we do on an interaction, and what capabilities do we need to support them? And as simple as that, we get a really nice way of thinking about how the business functions.
Yeah, I think you mentioned kind of like a very good point with what do we all like have as a mental model for like the operating model. I want to use that also as a chance for people to ask questions here. This is like a live session, so you can like ask and put a comment in, and we as a group here, and Terry especially, is able to answer those questions. So just that as a quick reminder to the audience here. When it comes to operating model, just to expand on that, what you just said, Terry, I think for me, I always see kind of like 2 main parts of that. And one is kind of like the more outward facing, like how do we as an organization deliver value, be it either to our customers or beneficiaries if we're kind of like in the public sector, but really the value delivery. But then also you have, as part of the operating model, also the how do we do that, and how like more the inward facing, be it capabilities, but also technology or processes or whatever, kind of like the how encompasses. And I think it's important to have kind of like both of those aspects, the outward facing value delivery, but also the inward facing, how do we organize it.
Great point. And again, if you use that common anchor point being the interaction, right, that journey, right, that stream of interaction stages that you go through as the foundation, right? So there's this canvas that we call the service blueprint, and it's fantastic for giving exactly the perspective you described there, Carsten, where below the line you've got your value stream stages, the capabilities, and so on. That's what you're doing. That's the behind the scenes, the backstage of what's happening. Above the line, you have the customer journey. What is the stakeholder doing? And you've got the front stage of the outward facing, the value. And this is where you can measure all of their feedback across the entire journey, on their satisfaction scores, their moments of truth, their various channels through which you're discussing things with them. And also, of course, capture pain points, ideas, and so on. That as soon as you can see an issue, whoops, in this particular stage in a journey with that particular customer segment, because it might be quite different with every different segment, we have a problem. What can we do about it? Drop down into down the journey stage to the value stream stage, down to the capabilities, and then you can identify immediately which process, which technology, which skill, which role it might be that you need to work on to move the needle on the satisfaction score. So a really neat way of just simply tying it all together.
So there's diversification, coordination, unification, and repetition. Those are the 4 operating models that I'm aware of that, are standard. What you're talking about is merging many of those, right?
Yeah, exactly, Jean.
We're almost reclassifying them.
Well, I think of it actually trying to bring us into layman's terms, really trying to give people a simple window into what are all the moving parts of a business and how do they connect, right? If you think of an organization, it's like it's a complex system, and it's in this constant state of evolution, but there's a lot of logic of that machinery, of how it all functions behind there. It may seem chaotic, but it follows consistent standard patterns. Every single thing that we do is, every process we go through, there are predetermined finite set of states that anything can transition through. If you take an order or a quote or an invoice, we know what the stages are that thing goes through. Any state that it's in determines what its next state be. It's a finite state machine. You can think of a business as being in a state of affairs. And the state of affairs is the current state of all the things in the business, all the records, all the resources, all the people, all the interactions, all the customers in their current state. And that every single one of them is in a state of evolution. And we know how its next states are more or less predictable. What creates the change, what creates the uniqueness about every interaction is the responses, is how people respond into it. But your pattern of what you can do is quite structured. So there is a very substantial set of logic about how a business functions. What we need to do then is to put this all together into an ontology. That's really the structure that everything we've done is based on the concept of ontology. It's a conceptual representation of all these things in the business and how they connect and how they hang together and the semantics of the relationships between them, right? So once you've got this ontology, it's pretty much what the architects use. The architects are really the custodians of this operating model content, and they then start to load that content in and connect it all up. And that becomes the living, breathing assets that represent, because architecture really is knowledge management. That's what we do. We as architects is art. Yep. And so I agree. By being the custodians of this repository of knowledge, this digital operating model, we now have people have been using this term quite a lot, and I think it's a great one, the digital twin of a business, which represents how it functions and how you can optimize it and fine tune it.
So I have heard operating model referred to as a digital twin.
Yeah. I think of it like that. I think if you can get it explicitly enough represented, it does become the digital twin of the business. And that is, the end state, the ultimate end state would be this sort of enterprise cockpit that you make available to the executive leadership, where they're getting real-time responses on the state of the operating model, what's happening in the operation. And they're pulling the levers, moving the dials to, move the needle on all of the responses as they're coming in. So and when you think about the opportunity that we're seeing now with AI technologies and so on, this is really we're not talking about science fiction anymore. We're getting really close to the computing power that can make some of this.
Well, to do predictive modeling, automated recommendations. I mean, I think that's started with a lot of the EA tools that are out there already, yours included.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you and I think that this is going to be a really great intersection of technologies. So we use knowledge graphs, right? The ontology is in a knowledge graph, and the knowledge graph is this really great logical explanation, as I've just described, of how the business functions. And then you've got AI. AI doesn't have any understanding of of the graph. It works on totally different principles. It works just on the basis of patterns that it finds in data, but doesn't understand the meaning of the data or anything about it.
Right, right.
If you give that AI the structure as well as the patterns, it is incredibly more powerful what it can then do. So and there are actually quite a few papers out there right now on the power of and the quality of responses that you get once you add knowledge graph definitions to very small data sets. But once you imagine you do this on the entire business, you bring the power of AI into really being able to explain how the business functions.
I think we have
Excellent. We do.
questions over, don't we?
Correct. We do have our first question here from Anthony. So you can also read it here on the screen. So the automation is the most misunderstood concept. Do you think that people create org charts knowing how the org operates and what states it might be in?
Well, it's interesting. We often sort of default to the org chart when we think of operating model, and how this hierarchy that we kind of assume is the operation. I think we're moving far away from that right now, and with new ways of working, where we're suddenly realizing that things like product-centric operating models and value stream centric operating models that really break down the silos of an org chart. These are proving to be a lot more efficient and effective than the old command and control style way of thinking. So I would say the answer is I don't think that the org chart is got as much importance anymore. And we're looking at much more sort of smaller cross-functional teams working on tight iterative little interactions as they go, and that is, I think that's a much better representation of the future of how we organize people.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've seen also. Like we talk, and you mentioned kind of like capability, something we very often see kind of like the decompose your organization more and think of kind of like what value do you deliver in different areas, and you might have like more cross-cutting, and then you have like the whole safe with kind of like the value streams, the knowledge trains, etc. So there's a lot of like talk about like slicing and dicing your org also differently, and decomposing and kind of like reuse, etc. So I found it kind of like more valuable to talk also about kind of like the capabilities or value streams. But I think naturally, even after you did a lot of work on that, like a lot of people want, okay, what does this now mean for my org, or what does kind of like, where do I report to, and where, like, I think there is a driver in us humans where we want like a little bit of a simpler structure sometimes. And that's why I think the org chart still has like a lot of importance, although it shouldn't have it, just like you mentioned.
Yeah,
we're trained. We're just trained.
Yeah.
We're trained. We are. We're accustomed to that, and it gives us a sense of comfort and belonging because we know where we fit. Yes, I mean I don't think you want to completely do away with an org chart, and you need management. You need those hierarchical structures, but I think what they need to be grounded in is what they do as a contribution, and that contribution needs to be quite explicit in the value streams that they support. And if that's how you organize your org chart, then you probably got a much better alignment of that's really got accountability for that end-to-end interaction. If you organize yourselves, and by the way, we are seeing a lot of that. There's financial services organizations that in Australia where I come from. And pretty much all of the big four banks are moving towards value stream structures for their.
Well, Buy-in is pushing that. I think Buy-in has helped that a lot.
Have they really? Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it fits very well with the services-based approach, exactly, and the product-based approach. I mean, when you think of a product team, what they're doing is product is it can be quite an abstract thing, not necessarily that physical thing that you give to a customer, but a loan in a bank is a product, and the people that manage the acquisition of customers for a loan, so that follows a value stream very precisely. So product owners can really use this approach really well.
Feel free to ask more questions. We got a lot of people online right now, so if you listen to this, feel free to comment.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
When I put together an operating model, and in the past, I've always had 5 challenges. They're just standard ones. But as Karsten mentioned, the org chart, that organizational alignment and change management is huge, because they think that way. They think in a box, oh, I report to that person, and therefore I can't cross over, even though agile teams, I think, are driving. So there's definitely collisions there. The alignment with strategy, because you'll have a corporate strategy, then you'll have organizations that have their own strategies, quite truthfully, and operating models. So there's that alignment. There's integration of processes and systems, which I think it's not so much a challenge. It's something you have to do, right? But a lot of companies don't have that. And then the last one is performance and monitoring. That management, how do you measure an operating model? How do you monitor that, really? So any ideas on how you solve this?
Yeah. So one thing that I think we have to accept and recognize is that the operating model exists in a bigger thing, which is the context, the purpose of the organization. So it's not everything, right? It's the operation.
It's the internal workings of the company.
It's how the business functions, right? Now, around that, you have to have all kinds of things. So yes, as you mentioned, strategy, where are we going? What are our desired results? What courses of action are we going to take to get there? And governance, very important. You also mentioned that. How are we going to govern ourselves? And governance even includes the kind of measurements and tracking our performance, right? So these are the sort of outer circle purpose context sort of concepts that sit around the operating model, and the operating model is this tangible, enduring thing, but it's not living on its own. It sits and it's governed by a broader, by us as people who have this vision of where it needs to go. So definitely all kinds of alignment, traceability concerns are required into those value streams, which we can easily do, actually. So things like risk, metrics, these are quite easy to map all the way across to identify. And in fact, if you put your metrics onto a value stream, it's really good, because you can have a metric for the entire value stream. You break the metric down into the value stream stages, and then you can get more precisely measure where the bottlenecks are happening across the value stream. So it lends itself really well to things like doing KPIs and OKRs and fitting into the traditional ways that we use for managing and governing an organization. It just really is the window into the machinery that's happening underneath. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I don't think those are going to go away. I just like help doing them. And more knowledge around it.
Well, we need more visibility of what's actually happening. And that is the thing. Like, I got into this right in the very beginning because I was leading solution architecture teams, as you said, and we'd be sitting in front of business stakeholders the day after we'd won a big technology deal, and we were trying to figure out how we would come into this organization, and help them automate. And we'd be asking them, tell us how you operate, tell us what you do. Well, nobody had anything. They'd stand up on a whiteboard and try and draw it as if this was the first time anyone had asked them. And that's the thing we have to get away from. We need the explicit explanation. And as soon as we get that, as soon as it's structured and defined, and that's what architecture really is. If we as enterprise architects don't take that and see that opportunity and just grab it with both hands, because we're not just about drawing boxes and arrows about technology.
Right.
You know, there's so much more this practice can offer, and we've just got to grab it and get out of IT and go and take it to where it can really add value.
Yeah, agree. So on the topic also on like supporting this and like business transformations and using an operating model, business architecture, doing transformation projects, and best practices in EA. We actually do have a conference from Lean42 coming up on July 3rd and 4th in Munich. So if you are in Europe or you want to visit Europe, come see us in Munich. Gene and I also speaking, and there's like lots of great conference speakers and practitioners that really tell you about how they use capabilities or how they used EA services or whatnot to kind of like structure and work towards their operating model and making it explicit and helping with that, also doing the changes and the improvements and moving forward. As we're coming up to sort of like the end, final comments or final question, Gene?
I did want to hear about the next phase, where you are, because at the conference you rolled out the beta for your tool. How's that going?
Going great, Gene. We are we've been for the past couple of years quietly beavering away at building up a whole new technology stack for our platform, leveraging some of the great new technologies that have come along in the meantime, and that is going great. The beta version is out. We're continuously adding new features to it, and it'll gradually be released over the course of this year. So
okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then we have a question coming in also from the audience. Do you use the book called Business Model Generation? I think there's also the Business Model Canvas.
Yeah.
There's also a Lean Canvas. So
yes, definitely. These are all really great. You know, everybody has got their mental models, and I think the more we bring to the party, the better. The Business Model Canvas, 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗏𝗏, and the Value Proposition Canvas of his, I think, are great contributions. Actually, one thing to just talk about, the business model is slightly different from the operating model.
Yeah.
Model, how you make money versus how you operate, but still, great lens, lots of intersection points, and very valid views to bring together. So I don't think anybody has a monopoly on ideas, or you know, we don't have we're all looking at the same elephant from different lenses, and we all bring great perspectives, which is awesome.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you so much for your time today, Terry. This was a great chat. Loved it.
Great. Thank you.
For the audience, if you want to see more like this, we do have recordings of this and other talks available on the Lean42 Academy. And if you watch a recording or this later and we're not live anymore, please still leave a comment here. Terry, Gene, and I are monitoring the comments, and we'll also put some text in there as well. So thank you so much for the engagement. Loved it, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Terry. Have a good time at the Guild.
Enjoy it. Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.